Brought to you by Bank of Baroda, India's international bank. Ye Pingo, call more, pay less.
Welcome back to Chai Chat, where we are discussing the change in plan or policy or strategy, call it you may, in Afghanistan by the US, and what impact does it have in the region. We have come to a point where we are talking about if President Trump does think that Pakistan has a lot of blame to take, then why are the US troops or US not playing a more prominent role in Pakistan, coming and maybe taking the troops there, doing something to combat that region, to deal with that region?
Yeah, it's a proxy warfare. Pakistan is not directly sending its troops in Afghanistan. The war is centered in Afghanistan. The bases and the safe havens and the sanctuaries are outside Afghanistan. The support system is outside Afghanistan. The financial system is outside Afghanistan. The training is outside Afghanistan. The madrasa that produces and indoctrinates the fighters are outside of Afghanistan. I think the Americans understand, the international community understands this, knows it, everybody knows it. There's no doubt that Pakistan has played a spoiler's role. And I think that the new policy, and this is why I think this new policy is much more important than other policies before that, and this has nothing to do with partisan politics, is very clearly addressing that. Now, again, we have to give it time. We have to see how it's going to escalate, if it escalates, how Pakistan might or might not change its position in its posturing, and how other countries in the region, including Iran, Russia, India, China, also will play their cards, because Afghanistan is not just an issue of Afghanistan and Pakistan, even though Pakistan is the biggest spoiler, and everybody has admitted to that. It's a proxy war. The proxy war has to be diffused. And how do you diffuse that? Takes diplomatic skills, political skills, as well as the kinetic skills that are needed in order to bring change on the ground and tip the balance in favor of the Afghan forces.
Can we safely say that a lot of these Islamists, let's call it Islamist groups that we see today creating problems like Daesh or ISIS as we call, and Al-Qaeda, Taliban, have all had their roots in the war that existed between 1979 and 1989 in Afghanistan? Is that correct to say?
No, I think there's nuances.
Yeah, there's nuances. I agree with the ambassador.
Yeah.
I think there's to a certain extent, yes, but it can't be. Many people have overblown that. I mean,
so where is this whole connecting to Pakistan? Why has it? Because Pakistan played a huge role in this Cold War.
Well, Pakistan Pakistan, I think, believes that it cannot afford to have enemies on both sides of its borders. They think they have to control Kabul. Because they've got an enemy in the east, India, and they'd be very, very nervous if they had an enemy on the west.
Which is a misperception.
Yeah.
Because
it is.
Because there's no Afghan political design
Absolutely.
will to be the enemy of any of our neighbors, including Pakistan.
I agree completely.
It's a bogus claim.
Yeah.
Which you're right. But to get back to your question quickly, the history of the 1980s was in a very different context, a different time frame, different enemies, different players. Part of these elements that still exist today, because, for example, there were no Taliban in the 80s.
Yes.
Taliban is a 1990s phenomenon.
Yes.
But Al-Qaeda did exist, it still exists.
And
Daesh did not exist, but now exists.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Has they all stopped? Because Al-Qaeda it happened soon after those 80s
So
war.
what happened was that Pakistan made a mistake, in my opinion, which is hurting Pakistan also, of allowing itself to use Islamic radical extremist groups for foreign and security policy purposes, vis-a-vis India and vis-a-vis Afghanistan.
Agree?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that has...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Pakistan early on used jihadists to deal in Kashmir. They used them as a proxy force. There's absolutely no question about that. But the thing that really concerns me, as I talked about in the first segment, is that they've been duplicit since the beginning of this war. I mean, Musharraf gave a talk that, early on in late September after Armitage, according to Musharraf's book, said, if you don't support us, that is, if Pakistan does not support the United States, Musharraf talks about this in his book, we're going to bomb you back into the Stone Age. I mean, the United States put great pressure on Pakistan. And Musharraf got on the radio that night and said to the Pakistani population, I've been forced to do this. I've always viewed the Taliban as my brothers, but I've been forced into this position. And I think that Musharraf and the Pakistani regime, ever since, has played, they've burned the candle on both sides. And again, as we discussed in segment 1, I think the biggest change that President Trump suggested in this change in policy is his view relative to Pakistan. But I'm not, it could change.
No, but why
I
is
don't know
there
what the
not?
result will be. I'm just saying that this
But
is
why
what we
is
see.
it then? Why there is not more work happening vis-a-vis Pakistan?
Well, there is work happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have
As
to
far
wait
as I
and
know,
watch.
There is work.
Yeah.
There's constant pressure. Every other week, there is an American official going to Pakistan. There's talk about maybe using more drones. There is talk about putting economic pressure on Pakistan, changing Pakistan's status within NATO as a major NATO ally,
Right.
and so on and so forth. All of this, there are elements of change that are about to happen if Pakistan does not change its posture, as I said.
The U.S. Congress has been seriously discussing naming Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism.
I mean, I have to stand up. There's no one to defend Pakistan, but they constantly would say that everybody says we harbor terrorism, but we suffer from it as well,
They
as
do
much.
And they will
Then
continue.
why would?
They're paying a price
Sure.
for policies that have gone wrong.
Look what happened in SWAT in 2009.
We keep
I mean,
telling them.
Yeah.
Protest is ongoing, they are suffering from that. If you are playing with fire, so definitely you will be burned. So now Pakistan is in a situation that they are suffering from that. So they play they didn't play a honest role in this war, but now they are suffering from that.
Go on.
Yeah, we discussed this at the forum yesterday, and one of the things that really disturbs me is that for 7 years, Pakistan has been shooting artillery shells into Kunar. 2 weeks ago, over a 3-day period, they shot 400 shells into the Kunar, displaced about 121 families, killed a couple of people. In September, it's estimated that Pakistan shot 1,500 rockets or artillery shells into a sovereign state, Afghanistan. I mean, these are, from my perspective, acts of war.
They're provocative.
Yeah, they're very provocative. Now, Pakistan will say that's because, Afghanistan is harboring terrorists that are attacking us. But this has been going on for 7 years. I don't know any other country in the world that shoots artillery into another country and it's not brought before the United Nations. Because this is an explicit act of war.
Well, one reason is that we have the NATO and the U.S. in Afghanistan, who also have at least air control over Afghan airspace to some extent. And when it comes to the military, they also need to agree with the Afghan government on how to respond to this.
I think.
And so their provocations may be politically motivated.
Oh, surely.
But at the same time, we have to have an answer to that.
We have to move on from Pakistan, but just a small observation that this is a country and the people who are suffering as well within the country. There seems to be two, and we all know, the government versus the army,
Right.
which seems to be having different goals. Would this ever, and they have a huge war with India going on, what can these countries do to bring a semblance in this region? Where is the hope?
That's the key question.
Sanctions on Pakistan. Yeah.
Well, I think within Pakistan, you have to hopefully see the emergence of voices of sanity, in my opinion. There are voices of sanity in Pakistan that say that this policy that is now 25 years old is failing and we need to change it. But there are vested interests and there is entrenched interest within the establishment, the military establishment, to pursue this line regardless of what the civilian government says. Because the Afghan case, the Indian file and the nuclear file are files that only belong to the military, and no civilian government in Pakistan has the right to say anything or change it.
The region, the stability of the region depends on each other. India and Pakistan have thing going between them. Pakistan and Afghanistan have something happening. Where do you think this change in policy, will this bring some hope to the country? If so, what? If not, then why not?
Let me just say, because I have little time left, but in my view, there is hope. You always have to have hope. You have to be an optimist in order to be able to come up with solutions. And this is not a dire case with no resolution to it at the end of the day. If we look at the history, there was a period in history where things were much more normal. What we need to do is find what is normal for all the countries in this region, what works as a win-win situation for every stakeholder in this region. It cannot be a zero-sum game. And I think this is the message that has to be clearly stated. We need to look for solutions, win-win solutions, no zero-sum game. And you have to look at the demographics. The demographics are going to put pressure on every government in this region to say that we want peace, we want jobs, we want functioning economies, we want functioning governments, we want accountability, and we want prosperity.
There are 3 points, like first of all, India should make good relation with Afghanistan, which India do their duty. Secondly, President Donald Trump clearly said we need to bring pressure on Pakistan. So what they are waiting for? They released Hafiz Saeed.
Just released him, yes.
Yeah. So it's like a clear warning to US. So why they are not taking an action against that?
That was an absolute
So you're not very hopeful.
The mastermind of Mumbai was released from House release a couple of days ago. That was a slap in the face, not only to India, but also.
I predict there will be a response to that slap.
Well, I hope there is. Now, I wish I could be as optimistic as my good friend the ambassador, but I really don't think that in the long term that we're going to be able to change Pakistan. You know, the United States, Afghanistan, and Pakistan all have different goals towards South Asia. One of the problems the United States faced for a long time is we just assumed that Pakistan should have the same strategic goals that we do, and they do not. So, you know, I don't think that an addition of 3,000 troops is going to make much of a difference. I think that the real key question on the security side is the sustainability of Afghan security forces. They've become extremely dependent on us, and if the United States ever moves out and the internationals do leave, I think that it would be a matter of days or weeks before you would see almost the complete deterioration of the Afghan security forces. So I want to be optimistic. I hope that we can put pressure on Pakistan to make real changes relative to the region, but I'm not overly optimistic.
The change in Afghan policy by Donald Trump, we have one hopeful, we have one skeptic, and we have one who does not believe it's going to change at all. What do you think? Please do send me your feedback on chaichat@ashtak.com, or you can Twitter me at Lavina Tandon. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Take care and God bless.
Brought to you by Bank of Baroda, India's international bank. Yepingo. Call more, pay less.